a museum where it's all right there, it's easy to see.
Right.
You really have to kind of think about it, and you contemplate what you're going to see before you get there and see the environment or meet the artist or go to a museum in an unusual location. And then on the way home, you're thinking about it too. So you had to put forth more effort, and so you'll get more out of it.
Did you guys ever go 12 hours out of your way and it's like a total bummer because it's not exactly what you
all the time,
all the time.
And kind of the thing now is so many environments that you see now aren't like what they used to be, and
same
a lot
with
of
flea
art
markets.
environments.
It really is hard to find great stuff, and so it's not an easy lifestyle. I mean, you spend a lot of time in the car with Bruce and I and 2 dogs, and we all love each other. But thank goodness we do, because there's a lot of just drive time and a lot of looking and a lot of.
But it's a lot easier now than it used to be, because with the internet and iPhones, you can find something so easily. It used to be that you were given some turn left at the tree with the broken limb,
right.
and in the old days you kind of had to make wrong turns. And often that's how art environments were discovered.
Which is true. It's like a curse and a blessing,
And I think all over the world you see sites like this where somebody has property and they start making something in some creative way. And it's almost as though it's all done just for their own enjoyment.
Right.
And if the outside world comes and discovers it, they are the lucky ones that get to enjoy it. But a lot of those sites are kind of like vegetable gardens. When the person's caring for them on a daily basis, they're there, but that person's gone, and all of that can go away really quickly.
Right.
And then there's nothing left but the photograph that you took, or the memory of talking to that person and getting the information about why they did what they did, or getting those direct stories.
As we get older, that what Bruce and I both are preservationists, and I talk a lot about this. And there's a box set that just came out. We're about to carry it in the gallery. I just got notice. I was so excited today that it's coming, and it's a box set that Dust to Digital put out about William Ferris's
Voices of Mississippi.
And it's his documentation in the 60s primarily, right? 60s and 70s.
60s and 70s, Jameson Thomas, who...
Of the South, and of religious music, and of
blues
folk
music
and folklore documentation. And it's things that we love. And those are things, like if he hadn't been there, I mean, it's like the Lomaxes, and it's the same thing with us, just on another level. It's like, and we're not the only people by any means, but people who love the art and the culture of things, if they're not collecting it or documenting it and sharing it, then it's going to be gone, and it changes. It's just like Waxahachie is a ever-changing town, and any community is. And so we're those people who are trying to keep that little ounce of the integrity of culture and history that we valued.
Yeah, I realized, my wife and I were talking recently about how we realized we were getting old because we're starting to sound like, that generation before us in terms of lamenting about how, every community that we go to, we look in all of the shops. There's no longer like mom and pop one-off shops. It's like you go to every community and it's, the same Starbucks and the same Panera and the same, you can just like list, there's a Texas Roadhouse every 25 miles. And it's just, it's like, this homogenization of our culture, right? And it's like, it seems like what you guys are attracted to and, trying to preserve is that stuff that is outside of the homogeneity.
You have to continue to celebrate the specialness and the individuality and the spirit of humans, to persevere and be creative.
And wherever you go, there's somebody doing something that's kind of offbeat or in an idiosyncratic way. We used to have that guy here, the carpet preacher. Remember, he made this sort of sandwich board with shag carpet, and it's spray painted some kind of Bible verse on there. It looks super uncomfortable, but the guy would walk around out here, and it's like, this is great, just his own individual form of expression.
It sounded really hot. It looked really hot. But it was, his message worked, because you're like, what in the hell? Like, what a way to get your message out.
Right.
But he came up with this whole suit that worked for him. And, it was definitely that, as David Byrne would say, the celebration of specialness, and through stories, which is really what we're all about.
Yeah. And so, David Byrne wrote the foreword for your book.
Yes.
So you wrote a book with Lynn Adele called "As Above, So Below: Art of the American Fraternal Society, 1850 and 1930." And so that's basically. Tell me about the book. We talked some about how you got into fraternal art, and that book is really kind of opening that up for people to be able to buy something that visually kind of looks at that, right?
What happened was I had enough fraternal material. In 2011, I did an exhibition at Domi Books in Austin, and the exhibition opened with a lot of interest. And Lynn Adele, who I had known from Spirited Journeys and then Black History, Black Vision, Texas African American self-taught artist, Lynn came to the show, and she loved the material and the mysticism and all the iconography, really something that she identified with. And she said, is there a book about this type of stuff, lodges? And I said, no, there's not. I mean, Bert Hemphill collected a few things. He mentions it. There's a little chapter in his book, saying what it is, but there's really not. And, so many people wonder about the history of the different groups.
Right.
And a lot of people don't realize that so much artwork was created as things that were used in the rituals themselves, or even folk art pieces that members would make for their own homes. So I collected the stuff, and she saw the show, and she said, well, I'm friends with Dave Hamrick, the editor of UT Press, and let me pitch this idea to the press and see if they might be interested. And Dave was interested, and so we got a contract with UT Press, and Lynn and I did the book, and it came out in 2016. And right when the book was coming out, we didn't realize this, but the Museum of American Folk Art, they were working on an exhibition of Alan and Kendra Daniels' collection that opened that next year at the Folk Art Museum. And so Lynn and I both came up and did speaking things at the museum.
That's
and
great.
Really enjoyed, getting to meet the Daniels, who I didn't realize as a collector of this material in Texas that there was, somebody with a really huge collection who had been collecting in Massachusetts since the 60s.
Wow.
So, there's material all over the country that's still, kind of coming out. And so, in a way, for somebody who's interested in collecting a form of folk art, it's accessible, and it's kind of exciting because you never know what's going to come out. Well, the other thing is, when I first started buying all this stuff, there really were very few people that were also looking for this material. And so now, there's a lot of people looking for it, so it's kind of harder for me to find pieces. Mm-hmm. But I have, a lot of it, and so I sell pieces through our store in Austin that we're a part of, and I'll sell pieces here at the gallery, and I probably will do some other fraternal exhibitions coming up. In November, I'm going to do a fraternal show and a project about Annie Buchanan, the seer of Corsicana, famous fortune teller from Corsicana, at 100 West Corsicana, the art residency.
Oh, right. I've heard about that
there
residency.
In downtown Corsicana. Which is, interestingly enough, it's in an old Oddfellows building. Right. And so I'm going to do part a display of fraternal lodge, Oddfellows stuff, and then do an art installation about this fortune teller, Annie Buchanan, that I became really fascinated with.
Sure. And so David Byrne wrote the foreword for your book there. How did you guys wind up?
So we met David through Phyllis Kind. Well, no, I guess we met David in El Paso. He was having an exhibition at the Bridge Center, And through our mutual friend Mark Mainwaring, we wound up hanging out with David in El Paso back in the early 90s.
We were out there for we went out there for our anniversary and visited our friend Mark, and he happened to be on the board of the art center that brought David Byrne to do one of his
And at the same time, he had the work of Lonnie Hawley and Charlie Lucas that he had brought to El Paso.
It was right about 1990 or 91.
So, and then through other friends that had worked with David on True Stories, we kind of had that connection.
And then Phyllis Kind, we'd see him in New York.
And then we started going to New York for the Outsider Art Fair when it first opened.
From the very beginning.
Right.
And I think that's how we met Phyllis Kind. But Phyllis and David had cabins on a they I guess still have cabins across a lake in the Catskills, and so that's kind of how we got to hang out with David more and realized that he had an interest in folk art and in the lodge art too. So he would come to Texas on tours and come and visit us and buy things from us here in Waxahachie or in Austin, whether it was new folk art, by contemporary living working artists or antique lodge pieces.
Sure.
David
he's
has
always liked cool,
always been a collector.
Stuff.
Yeah.
And also kind of been interested in mysticism and that kind of thing. So
we can talk about all
kind
kinds
of
things.
there's a lot of overlapping, and you kind of think about mentors in your life, and to be able to hang out with David Byrne and he's definitely a mentor for sure. I think there's something about kind of there being a school of art or a school of collectors in a way of American self-taught art that we really haven't had that much of in Texas.
Right.
Here in Texas, Murray Smither, probably one of the first people to collect folk art in Dallas. And then in Houston, John and Stephanie Smither, Murray's cousins, were also collecting back then, but not that many museums. The San Antonio Museum of Art and the Dallas Museum of Art did a show called Ancestral Legacy, and they included the work of self-taught African Americans with contemporary trained artists as well. And Derek Webster in Chicago, Sultan Rogers in Oxford, Mississippi are both two people that we first discovered from that 1989 catalog. We never actually saw the show itself, or I didn't see the show.
No, I don't believe I did
but
either.
the catalog, it said Jameson. It said Sultan Rogers lives in Oxford, Mississippi.
Sure.
So we tracked him down, and we would go to Oxford and buy his wood carvings.
That's what made us want to go see Bessie Harvey.
Bessie Harvey was in that exhibition too.
And it's interesting because they did that exhibit, but they never really collected.
They have the Texas Kid.
They have very few regional pieces, but still to this day, our area museums don't collect.
We haven't really had curators that knew a lot about it, or
we've had a lot of area museum people appreciate what we do, but doesn't necessarily fit in the collection, except for the Beaumont Museum. The Museum of Southeast Texas have a huge collection.
So what about you guys? Are you keeping enough stuff as you go that there would be a collection that you would be capable of bestowing someday?
I don't think there would
be the Howard Rashofsky of outsider art.
I don't think there would be any problem with us putting together a core collection for something or somewhere. I don't think there'll ever be a problem with that. Yeah, we definitely have a great collection and a great inventory, and try to continue that. It's not an ending thing.
Right.
So what one day will happen to things and where it goes and how that happens, we
don't really have
that definitive plan.
Right.
But you see, like a lot of the collectors that are kind of retiring, some pieces are given to museums, and then the rest of the material, it gets kind of wound up being distributed amongst the collectors. And that's kind of what's interesting now, is there's a lot of younger collectors out there that are kind of keeping the market vibrant, and a lot of self-taught art is kind of making inroads to auction houses that handle pretty substantial.
It would probably
art.
be easier to think about your question